Hi everyone, it's me again,
Hi
Mr.
everyone.
Alan, and she is Jessica, and she is now currently in Harvard studying a joint degree program between Harvard University and Harvard Business School and the Harvard Candidate School of Government. And in this episode, she is going to share her experience of how to prepare for the admissions. Jessica, after watching the videos, I got a few questions. How long did you take for preparing for the SAT? It is a quite difficult test. A lot of like readings, writings, and logic as well. How do you manage that, and how long do you prepare in advance?
Yeah, I would say on and off, it was more than a year. And I say that because, well, I first started, I think, not necessarily in the right manner. So initially, I
Mm,
remember just like buying those vocabulary cards and just meeting one of my close middle school friend then just to like try and like self-study on our own. And we didn't really understand the rules and some of the tips around the different test areas. So we went to take the
mm,
test. I don't think the test result was great. And then afterwards, we tried to like find solutions around it. And then we went online and then found out that a lot of people actually go to something called like a test prep companies. And then so we found out about companies like Princeton Review or Kaplan.
mm,
And then actually, I don't remember exactly which one I signed up for, but I like bought a book. Also started going to class and took like a quick like crash course on SATs. And then once it's an instructor who, so then I really just needed help with English, not the math part. And then
mm,
so English, they can just like immediately tell you, look, exactly reading. These are the 1, 2, 3, 4 like tips and like patterns that you usually see, and what do you need to do about it? So that to me was extremely helpful, just to just understand, oh, this is actually what the test is trying to test for.
yeah.
And I think that's just like something that like we weren't. It was difficult for us to find out on our own. And so
Mm,
once that happened, um, I think I probably just practiced like a bit more, did more practice tests, and then took it, and it was fine. So it was just like it was a while ago before I actually took that
mm,
course. But once you take that course, I think it's like a really easy springboard for you to do
mm.
well after once
Yeah,
you put
because
in
you
the
have
work.
learned a lot of exam techniques, right?
Exactly,
In
exactly.
the video, you have mentioned about the SAT and the predicted grades, or the grades that you got from the school. Do you know that how the schools will weigh the two exams grades? Were the SAT more important than school grades, or are they actually equally same?
Yeah, I think that's a really it really depends on schools. Um,
Mm.
and maybe for like right now it's already changed a lot from the time I went, which was a while ago. um, but I think both, I would say, it's like I think as a student you should just treat it as um, equally important. I
Mm.
think a lot of people say grades at the end of the day are just like a threshold that you need to meet first. You need to like get to a like I think especially for SATs, like you need to score a certain score for schools like say like Ivy League schools to
Mm.
consider. After
Mm.
that, I'm not sure if actually the internal grades come together there, or it comes after. Then they like look at your internal like predicted grades in my case then. But I would say like overall, I think grades are more ensuring that you meet a certain standard and you can attain like maintain like a certain academic achieve certain academic rigor in the school to make sure you can keep up with the classes. But after that, I
Mm.
think it's a lot about your own story, what you can bring to the classroom, what
Mm.
your background is. Yeah, that is more important after that.
For the admissions purpose, did you participate a lot different extracurricular activities because of that. Like you join a lot of clubs, you participate in a lot of activities, I don't know, workshops in order to enhance your CV or your resume before.
I think I don't like yeah, I think that's definitely a mentality that is like very prevalent in Hong Kong or probably like yeah, many across many different countries. I wouldn't say I actually did it just like to enhance my CV, I would say so. When I was in a local school before, I genuinely just enjoyed being in like all sorts of different activities. So I was like part of the table tennis team, like choir, orchestra, did like speech festivals all the time. So did exchange programs. So very involved within the school itself. And actually, when I moved to Lipo United World College, I actually did like relatively much less of these extracurriculars. I remember being like a leader of an organization and then participating in maybe like 2 or 3 other activities. So then I sort of shifted to the model where I just wanted to like focus on a few things that I genuinely was really interested in. I didn't necessarily have to be a leader in everything to like beef up my CV. So I think it's really just like showing your like being authentic and showing your real interest in some of the activities and showing like your dedication in certain things. And I think that might, that's probably enough already.
And meanwhile, you have mentioned about your school, the school's academic counselor, the school counselor, and also some external admissions counselor. What are the differences between them? Do you think that it's more effective to have external one than the school one?
Yeah, I mean, I think that really depends on your school. I know that for some schools, like if you have like fewer students, then your internal academic counselor could provide more support, like read through your essays, chat through what schools he or she thinks you should apply to that's like more suited to you. So I think like depending first on your number of other students that your counselor has to cater to, but also just really depends on school because I think different counselor have different capacities and like standards of what they should be delivering. And so in my case, then I just actually, I mean, I worked with both, but I also just like I think had recommendations from other students, upperclassmen who also worked with external academic counselors. So I thought I would appreciate that support as well. And so I worked with someone else outside of the school to work on like my entire application.
So you mentioned about the exam SAT, and the grades, and also the letters. And do you need to have any interviews afterwards?
Right, interviews. Yeah, so I had my interview. I think actually, I think it also again depends on schools a lot, but from what I understand or remember from the past, I think many U.S. schools would do interviews. For my case, I had my interview in Hong Kong by a
Mm.
Cornell
Oh,
alumnus.
in Hong
Yeah,
Kong.
so in Hong Kong, yeah, exactly. So I think some schools do it differently. Maybe some schools actually have like an admissions officers, but some schools also just have like alumni around the area that you're
Oh,
in to
right.
interview you. And so I think the degree of importance of interviews really depends on schools. For example, for me, what I hear about is that the undergraduate I went to, by then you interview, like you already probably are getting in. And
Oh.
it's sort of just like testing like a final stage. But I think for some other schools, an interview is much more important. So that's actually the determining factor of whether you get in or not. And so I think it depends
It depends on the
on
subject, the program that you apply for.
exactly, it depends on how the school yeah designs the process.
You said that you have applied for a graduate school after your investment bank work experience, right? So, from your perspective, what are the main important skill sets the students will need to have for applying a graduate school? Like some.
Right, right. Yeah. So I mean, I've worked in both investment banking and consulting. I think this skill set question, I think it's less about like what skill set is needed. It's because like many people actually come from very different backgrounds, right? Some come from like NGOs, some come from like public sector, some come
Right.
from private sector. But I think what the school really wanted to see is that like you excelled in whichever occupation or whichever industry and role that you were performing in. And then making sure that you're able to bring to the table your experiences, and talk about your viewpoints and perspectives from like a very different point of view, right? So I think like what that's most valuable, because yeah, for example, my background was working in finance before, and then moving to Tanzania to work in like development consulting. So I could perhaps bring more of a perspective from coming from like a economic, like a private investment into a developing country perspective, and bringing that out into the classroom versus someone who worked in, for example, private equity in the US, or someone who worked in, say, education in Morocco. So I think the most important is to just like knowing your perspective, and that you did well beforehand, and that you can then bring those skills and perspective into the classroom to make like discussions and perspectives as diverse as possible.
Can you share one word of advice for the students who want to study abroad?
One word.
One word.
Um,
This is
I
a
would
question
say
that I ask all my guest speakers.
I would say authentic. I think be authentic. Go with what you truly believe is the right path for you. I think both paths that I took, for example, studying industrial and labor relations was something, to be honest, like very few Asians from like Asian countries actually study that, because they're like, oh, this is not, engineering, or it's not economics. Like this is like a subject I've never heard about. So but I felt like this was the right mix for me, and like that's what I wanted at that time. And then making the decision to move from Hong Kong to Tanzania again was something people question me about all the time and are confused about a decision. But I felt like that was like the experience that I was looking for. And so I think be authentic, follow what your gut tells you, talk to more people to get different perspectives, and then like find your way and like pursue that.
Right. Thank you so much, Jessica. And I love your advice as well. Be true to yourself, be authentic, and also you always need to understand, explore who you are, because you also need to write your story. You have to know about yourself, to how you present to the universities. I think this is really important. So be an authentic you. So thank you, Jessica, and I will see you next time regarding an other guest speaker. So thank you, Jessica. Bye bye.
Bye.